Hi! Oh, yay! I'm seeing people are here. Okay, cool. This demo today is just kind of introducing you to the workflow using Unity with the XR toolkit and the XR plugin management system. I produced a couple or put together 3 different scenes, and there might be extra stuff, but I'm going to take you through what I have prepared today, and anything we might not get to, you have the files. So you can download the files, so everything I'm showing is in a package file. And so let's just kind of step through that for a second. So currently, I've got my Unity set up, and I have scene and game view, so I can see both like my working scene view, my authoring environment, and then what it will look like in game mode. Now, of course, what I'm going to be showing you today is I'll be playing it as a game and then putting on my Oculus Quest. And so it's rendering straight from Unity to my Quest. I am now going to launch the Unity Hub. So what will you do with that package file that I supplied to you? And you're just going to go new, and I'm just going to take you through this step. This might take a second to launch. I'm not going to launch the whole thing, but just I'll step you through my already produced file after this. And we're just working with the 3D template, find a place to put it, and a location and a name for it. All right, and then you'll just press create. Once you're there, I just am going to give you a quick preview of the 3 scenes I have because it's a kind of sequence. So I have demo scene 1 in the set of project files, and here we go. I have created all of these folders. I think it's really important. Now, do as I say, not as I do, because sometimes my files get super messy when I'm, working on a deadline. But to create folders here for all of my different assets. And then if I scroll down to my scenes, I have demo 01, 02, and 03. So demo 01 is just a really simple scene. Demo 02 is basically the same principles as Demo 01, but starting to add more assets to it, taking things, low poly assets from the Unity store. And then Demo 03, if we get to it today, is then adding some lighting system and post-processing. All right, but it's always important to start with the fundamentals. Once you have imported that package or started your demo file, you'd go to started your project file. You'd go to Assets here and Import Package. Now, there are a couple of other things that we have to set up for 2020, or basically any version of Unity. So we'll go first to File Build Settings. Now, again, as I mentioned, I'm using the Oculus link, which turns my Oculus Quest basically kind of into a Rift, right? And so I'm rendering straight to it. So I'm using the PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. But if you don't have the link or it doesn't work with your particular operating system, your machine, you can always use Android. You'd click this. You'd just switch the platform to Android. There are a couple of other settings that I won't go into today. You'd make sure you'd add any of your open scenes or any scenes that you actually want to sideload to your Quest, and you'd be set. Now I'm going to click on Player Settings. Now, if you are following along, or if you watch this later and want to remember this, first thing, very important, you want to go to XR Plugin Management. Now, on your screen, you're not going to see any of this stuff here. So you're going to need to install the XR plugin management, and then you're going to need to make sure that you click on Oculus. And then you'll just, press the radio button, check, and you're set there. A couple of other things. just to make sure we're ready to go and everything will work and we don't get compiler errors, never fun, is go to the package manager, and we want to enable preview packages because we want to use something called the XR toolkit. So you're going to enable preview packages and make sure you have show dependencies checked. And for right now, that's probably, that's all we need, especially because we're doing it through the link. Otherwise, if you were sideloading, you'd make some changes in the player here too. All right, moving on. So we've got that set up. Now, I'm going to check my package manager, and if you don't see package manager on your version of Unity right now, just go to Window Panels, and then you can pull up any of the tabs that I have and windows that I have open currently can always be accessed through Windows and Window Panels. So through my package manager, I can see, now these are just various assets from the Unity store, but I actually want to go to In Project, and we can see I have XR plugin management. Yes, this is good because that'll help it work, right? Or make it work, drive it. And then here's the XR interaction toolkit. Now, you're not going to have that here yet. So you're going to go to Packages Unity Registry, and you can scroll through, or you can do a search for that XR toolkit, interaction toolkit. Let me just expand that so you can actually see that here. And for this tutorial, very important, I'd like you to use 0.9.3, so not the latest one, okay? And you can see I already have that installed. And so that's what you just click on. You'd press install, and then you'd press download and then install. All right. And I'm also checking, so Oculus XR plugin. I'm using 1.34 and that's working. If you're sideloading, you might get a black screen. So I recommend doing 1.61, so updating that one. And to do so, you just click on it and you see you can update it right there. Okay. As far as assets, for any of you who might not be using the most recent editor of Unity, you could access your asset store like right in your Unity editor. Now you have to search online. I've already downloaded some assets, as I mentioned before, low poly assets to get us started today, and all of those are in the package file that I have prepared for you. So if you're wondering kind of where they are, there are a couple ways that you can see them. You just go here again and switch from Unity Registry and In Project to My Assets, and you can click on Load Next. And so now I've loaded all of these different assets. I download a lot of assets, obviously, and I can find the assets there. Now, you're not going to have all of those assets in your project. You're going to have different assets. But to keep that simple, and so you can find the assets I've used later if you want to use more of them, I just created a little folder called Asset Store. And that's where you're going to see the assets that I'm using for this project. All right. So just checking myself to see if there's anything else I want to review before we get into actually what's going on in this scene. Okay, a couple more things in case you are newer to Unity. I was talking about, the game menu. All of these panels are adjustable. So here's my game, and now I've just freed it from the basic interface, and now I've snapped it back in. And then you can always adjust this if you need more screen space or less screen space. Great. Inspector, so we have our hierarchy. All the objects you see in the scene show up in the hierarchy here in Demo 01. And then you can see information about, and I'm just going to make that game view really small right now so we can kind of focus on the inspector. So you're going to see all of the attributes of each one of those assets or objects in your scene on the right. Now, of course, I have a standard setup. You might have a slightly different setup, but just remembering the tabs and the windows is more important. Or panels. So hierarchy is where you're going to have all your assets that are in your scene. in your project folder, that's where you'll have all the assets that are in your entire project. And then you also have a window where you can actually look in more detail at your different assets. And you can always here adjust them, small or big, like so. Okay? And so you can make it text or icon. Another tab you're probably going to want to have open, if we're able to get to it, I need to speed up, is the lighting tab. Okay, so again, window, panels, lighting. And then that will pull up the tab and you can snap it into the interface. And now let's actually start doing, so what I'm going to do now is a bit of reverse engineering, okay? So what I have here, and maybe it would be helpful right now, is if I put on my headset so you can actually see. Seeing is always better than just describing, right? So I'm going to put on my headset, then put my headphones back on, and hopefully this is all going to work. Okay, I'm picking up my controllers. I've got my left controller, my right controller. Yeah, okay, and now, actually, I want to press play. And this should go to full screen so you all can see that. I know there's a little bit of a lag. Okay, super. So what I've set up in this scene is just something really simple. If you saw the kind of like promotional image for the demo today, it was this island with this water and it looked really cool. This looks very plain, but again, we're starting simple. So I press teleport. So I'm just pressing my trigger and it moves me in space. Right? And using teleportation, ooh, and I'm picking up some of these apples. Yes, I call these apples. There are actually just spheres that I have turned red. Okay, and so, and I could do this with my other controller. Yes, so I'm pressing the grip buttons here to actually snap those objects to my controllers so I can pick them up. I also have snap turn enabled, so if you can see I'm snapping at 45-degree angles right or left. I can do that with both controllers. Now one thing you might have seen when we first entered the scene is some of the apples fell, and then some of the apples, look, I can't interact with them. They're like stuck up there on the tree. So some apples fell. Again, just go with my metaphors. I know this is a very simple scene. So let's take a look at how all of this is constructed, again, my reverse engineering way, and figure out some aspects of why things are interactable and why they're not. Okay, let me take off this headset. Whew. All right. Yeah, apples. Okay, so I'm stopping play now, and now let's dig in. Okay, so we've got the demo 01 XR rig. What the heck is that? That is super, super important. When you first open Unity, you're just going to have a main camera and a main light source. For VR, and there are different types of VR, and Unity has recently within the past year, started using the XR plugin management. There are other, there's OVR, there's Steam VR, but we're working with Oculus and we're using the XR plugin management. And so I have this XR rig with a camera. All of this has been, I've kind of already put together, and let's take a look at where that is so that you can find it later if you download this scene again. Ooh, I've got some stuff in here. It's a little messy in here. Sorry, my files are a little messy, but here's the one I made. So I have this prefab called Demo 01 XR Rig. And if I wanted to, and basically where I got that from originally was the XR Rig. There's an XR Rig demo. If we go to all, there's an XR rig that comes with the XR toolkit, right? And so then you can just build upon that. So how would I build upon that if I wanted to? I'd just create an empty game object and then I'd start adding components to it. So I'd click on it once and call it, this is going to be the XR rig. Now this XR rig is really complex, and since I'm trying to get through a lot of material today, we're not going to build one ourselves. I'm just going to take you through like a basic intro of how you could build that and then show you all the components that have been added. And then we just right click on that again. So I'm right clicking right on XR rig and I'd create empty again and I'd create my camera. And right now they're just empty game objects. They don't do anything. But once you add components to them, So XR, then like XR rig, once I actually tell that game object what it is all about, it will actually start to function in this scene. I'm right-clicking now to delete that, though, because we're going to focus on the XR rig we have. So a couple things about this. It's pretty important to move assets in your scene around your XR rig. And if we look in our camera, we can see, like, if I decided, oh, I want the tree to be closer, I wouldn't move my XR rig. I want to keep that around the 0. I put it a little higher, 0.5 for my height, but 0, 0, 0, or 0.5, and a scale of 1. Okay, because otherwise you can get some unexpected results. So, and then move your assets around in the scene. Now, what else is happening? So, to get certain things to work, we start with this add component, right? And you have all of these components. They're here. You can always search them here. Or if you go to add component and put in XR, look at all the options it gives you, right? And we know we want snap turn, that 45-degree turn. So I just go snap turn. There it is. We know we want to locomate through the system. We want to teleport, the teleportation, as I was, jumping from, I call those stones. You'll see them actually as stones in the next scene. So skipping stones. So that's the teleportation system. Oh, and something I was saying earlier, generally today, teleportation is recommended, and why is to try to decrease motion sickness. Some people still feel nausea when they're in VR, when they're just walking around or running, and so teleportation is a way to kind of skip to the next space. You can move great distances. The other thing, like I'm in a really small space right now, so I can't literally like move in my space to emulate the space I'm moving in the scene. Teleportation lets me do these leaps, so I can stand in place, but my rig, my character, actually is moving forward or backwards or all around in space. Okay. So now I've also added a controller manager script. This is something from the XR toolkit. They have some examples on GitHub. I have all of that included here today in, I have that script right here. And then the other scripts are actually in the XR toolkit scripts folder. But you can actually, if you look up XR toolkit and go to GitHub, you can find some cool examples there too. So here again, XR interaction toolkit. I keep calling it XR toolkit. It's about interaction. So interaction toolkit. Okay, so all of those components have been added, but to get them to work, we actually need to tell the XR rig what it's applying it to. So we're applying it to the rig, so we just drag it into itself here, the camera offsetting, and then the main camera, which is the camera that's tracking the game object, which is going to be you in a headset, and you just drag it over. See, just like that, super simple. Okay, and I don't want to do anything to that prefab right now. Okay, that's good. Then I've added some other things, just controllers. So as you saw, I had these two controllers, and I've got my left and my right, and the base controllers are for the snap turn, for picking things up, as you saw how I just was able to pick up the apples, as I call them. And then the left teleport controller allows me to teleport. Again, for purposes of time, I'm not going to go into every one of these components right now, but just so you can see, we set the transform to 0, 0, keep that cool. We have, if you noticed when I was in the XR space, we had these controllers. So they kind of emulate their, these instead of hands. And so that's in the prefabs folder here. I have it as controllers, I believe. Oh, I thought my, I have more stuff in here. Yeah, here's the original controller, and then there's a prefab for controllers too, and you can just type in controller to find it. And so then you just pull that over here to your model prefab, so you actually get some controllers. And then here we're just setting up the usage, right? So we want a grip, a trigger, and a trigger. So the grip was the way that we actually were able to snap the objects into our hands. We also want to just set up our interaction, the lines that kind of show you where you are in space and what you can reach to or where you can go, right? And so all of that is set up for each one of the controllers. And again, we do it again for the teleportation, and a couple of variables have changed. Now we don't have the grip, we just have the trigger, 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 and so trigger and we teleport. And also that is, let me go into demo rig. With this controller manager, this is really cool, where you can actually, if we wanted 2 buttons to activate our teleportation, we would just change here in size 2. And, oh, I just made it 21. Okay, we don't want 21. That would be insane. And then if you click here, you can change the elements and change it to different triggers or controller options. All right, but I'm going to undo that now and not go to 21. Finally, again, if you're new to Unity, that's why I started with this kind of simple scene. So what I'm calling water right now is water tree. I have all of this in this folder. Now, if you don't know how to do that, again, it's just create empty game object, or if create 3D object cube, and then you just make it a child of the game. It's in a folder. All right. Very simple. And then making these simple primitives also is very simple. You right click and see you have all sorts of objects. You can also go up to game object and get this same menu. So here you can get your 3D primitives, cubes, spheres, capsules, etc. We're just working with 3D objects today. Some particle systems, I'm actually going to show you how to do 126. I'm going to show you, hopefully, how to do a little particles. Lights, where you can add your lights. Audio, we're not going to add an audio source today, but this is where you could add an audio source to the main scene, like ambient audio, or you could actually add audio clips to controllers or to interactive elements. We're not adding video today. UI, I do have a UI object and canvas object in the next scene, so we'll get to that. And then XR, so this is where we have a lot of options for adding, the ray interactors, direct interactors. We've already done that over on the right side in our inspector, but like a UI canvas, these teleportation anchors and teleportation area. So what's that all about? So one other really cool thing, I'm sure you know this, but focus is F on your keyboard. That just pulls you right in. All right, so we're there, and I have a teleportation anchor set up here. Now there's some cool things set up in this teleportation anchor. Right now, the little glowing light that you saw when I went through, or hopefully you saw when I'd hover and, put my raycast towards that anchor point and it would light up, all of that is built in. And right now, it's just hidden. So, as usual, I added a component called Teleportation Anchor Script. All these scripts have already been written. Whew, yay. And then I just added a couple other cool things in there and all of this is constructed as a component. So you could always right click as a prefab, not a component, excuse me, and open that asset in context or in isolation just to see how it's built and see all the different parts, okay? And so it has all of these different parts, which are also an anchor, a teleport highlight, and a direction arrow that just gives you a sense of what direction you want to move through the scene. So that's how it's kind of constructed. Now, I'm saying all of this is like, yeah, that's super simple, and that's super simple. As you start doing this, it can be hard, right? And so that's why I also wanted to provide you with this sample project file, because I feel like the best way to learn often is, taking a lot of tutorials for one, but also if you have a project that you can kind of reverse engineer and see how someone else built it, you learn from that. And you just have to be very, very conscious of, what is the word I'm looking for? You have to be very detail oriented. So you have to look at how all of these things are constructed. So I just have a Boolean here. This is just like a true false. When you hover, turn it on, that little highlight. When you are exiting your hover, just turn it off. All right. And so there we have some teleportation anchors. So that allows us to just skip on these things that later you'll see are little skipping stones to the island. And this, for right now, is an island. And again, how would I have made that? I made a simple primitive object and I flattened it out a little bit so it's super skinny or has a very little height. And so we can see that, and it's floating on the water. It has a couple things that are important because we're able to teleport all across it. So I just added something called a teleportation area script. I'd already shown you over here. You right click XR teleportation area. So we could do it that way and just have their one that's pre-built, or we could just create our own primitive object, which is a plane here. Well, I didn't use a plane. I actually wanted it to have a little depth and have a mesh collider so objects wouldn't fall through it. But we can do that and then add that component of teleportation area script. Okay, and let me just have to align in terms of height. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean that we're going to get to the next scene where there's some terrain, and you're going to see I did this funny ramp, but it's a good idea. I mean, you could change your teleportation so the actual like rollover, when you roll over and you get that kind of highlight. I mean, you could change them all, in any way you want, but that kind of consistency. I mean, this is about good user interface design too, right? And so you want the person to feel comfortable when they're in VR, particularly if they're a new user, and so if too many things are inconsistent, they're going to feel lost. So that's just a good UI, but you could definitely change them if you wanted to. You could have different types of teleportation anchors and areas in your scene. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, there is one other thing I want to go over in this one. And then we're going to move on because it's 1:30. So you notice I put all my assets that create my world, so to speak, this very simple world right now, in something called world. And I just wanted to remind myself here, I set it to static. Now, right now, that doesn't really mean anything, but later, if we have an opportunity to get into baked lighting, I'm doing like I'm covering a million things today. But again, that's why I'm providing you this file so I can touch on these things and then you can kind of go back and dig in. But it is very efficient to use baked lighting, particularly for VR, because just think it's rendering like 90 frames a second for both eyes, right? That is just really processor intensive, and particularly if we're thinking of untethered VR. What is untethered VR? VR, the Oculus Quest. You don't have to have it hooked up to a computer. You can store everything on your Quest and view it, right? But if it's too processor intensive, you're going to have lag, and then people are going to get sick. So baking your light maps, those kind of things. And what that means, if you set the objects that don't move in your scene to static, they get baked in. So like there's a light map that just is always consistent. It's not having to re-render those lights. And so that's a cool thing to do. So I just set those for static. Make sure though, like any of your interactables, any of your animations, anything like that, make sure they are not static or they won't work, okay? Like your interactables, if they're static, how are you going to grab it? Because it's set to be still. Let's see. Okay, nothing else in the chat for right now. So let's go to our next scene. So, scenes. So now I'm going to open up scene demo 02, and I'm not going to save this. All right. A few other things just about the interface that I want to review. Yay! So now we actually really have, my apples still don't look much like apples. And these are, again, low poly assets. It's actually cooler low poly like that though. And this is all, again, from my asset store folder where I just went to the asset store and downloaded a lot of free assets. Okay. When you're searching on the asset store, depending on, if you got paid or not, but I tend to like search for free assets first, especially when I'm prototyping, just to at least have placeholders. And as you see, first you start with your primitives, you start to kind of work out your interaction system, and then you can build upon that. Why don't I play this again? Because again, it helps to see what's going on. And then after I play it and you see some of what's going on, we'll go back and start digging into how it all works. Cool. All right. I might have to wake up my Oculus Quest. I don't know if y'all can hear me right now because my headphones aren't here. Okay. Yeah, Quest is awake. Okay, press play. Yeah. All right, here we go. So see, I told you they were stones. So here they're stones. Now there are a couple things. So this is the basic teleportation I showed you in the last one. And it has the highlight when you hover. I've also linked another, well, now I just moved on, but I linked another UI element to it. So that's something called Canvas. So we use the Canvas object and then TextMesh Pro. That's all in the UI elements. And I just set it so that when I hover over that first rock, it gives me this little welcome sign. All right. And so now I'm clicking with the trigger and I'm moving forward. And then I've set this whole island. Oh, it's a little. Yeah, I've set this whole island as a teleportation area. And what are some other things going on here? So let me teleport here. And I'm now going to press with my grip button. And I've got flowers. And now let me teleport over here and get a little closer. And put the flowers in the vase. Yay! Okay. And here's some more. So I can put those in the vase until this gets old. Okay. All right. And I've got something here. I just made this really simple particle system. You can download all sorts of particle systems. One thing I think is really important though, when you go to the asset store, you sometimes can find things from like 2014 and they'll have scripts and they're not going to work with your current Unity editor. So on the asset store, you can actually set preferences. So you can say, I want to find assets for 2019 or 2020 Unity. I want free assets. I want 3D assets, but be specific. And also versioning is so important. If you're going to try, importing all these new assets in and you already have a nice project going, create another version of your project before you bring all that stuff in, because compiler errors are devastating, right? When you've already done a lot of work and then you bring in this asset package and it has some script in it that Unity doesn't like, and then you can't press play, nothing happens, right? All right, so we're just going to teleport around. I've got some other simple interactables here. Cool. Oh, yay, there's some in the box. Uh-huh. And actually, okay, I'm pressing grip here. So I've got two ways that I can interact with this. Now, there was that question earlier about kind of teleportation points. And so now let's go up this ramp. And as you can see, it's really faint because I'm using the same kind of teleportation anchors. If I had spent a little more time on this, I might kind of make this a little more aesthetically pleasing, or also actually easier to see because it's a little hard to see those directional points. But I'm just going up the ramp and I have one set. Oh my gosh, that's precipitous. Whoa, I'm right on the edge. And look how I'm actually scared of heights in real life. And one thing in VR, I play like the Spider-Man game just so I can get over my fear of heights, at least fear in VR. Now, I want to jump on a cloud now. So I set a teleport point there. Oh my gosh, look at that. Okay. And now to the next one. Okay. Fun. I am actually starting to get a little dizzy here. See? And now I'm just going to go back down to Earth. Now, a couple of other things to notice. All this area, so see, I get a raycast that's green. So that lets me know that there is teleportation available to me. When I get a raycast of red, I can't go anywhere. And so right now I haven't given you a way back unless we could, and actually my raycasts aren't long enough. You can actually change your raycast lengths, but they're not long enough right now. So I couldn't just kind of try to I can't get back up to that cloud. So right now I'm stuck on this side of the river. But then you could add teleportation or some other, locomotion system to go across the water too, but that's not there now. All right, so I'm going to get out of this so we can actually start to take a look. What time is it? Okay, good. And let me stop playing, take off my headset. Oop. Yeah. Okay. Oh, yay, I'm seeing people. Hey, Mark and Jude and Ghosty and I Love Maple, which is Kristen, I think. So, okay, cool. Let's keep going. Oh, shoot. See, what did I tell you? I just got an error in Unity. All right, I had to, yeah, that's really scary. That happened once last night, too. All right, so it goes. This is, the lesson of technology is it's not if it will fail, it will fail. And you keep going and you open the file up again. So let's do that. Hopefully we won't have any errors for the rest of this tutorial. Yay! Okay, things are looking good. I'm getting some errors here. I'm just going to clear those right now. I don't want to see them. They're not red. So I'm like, okay, I'm not too scared. Okay. I was getting messages, actually. Okay, so now I'm back. A few other things when you're working in Unity. So what can happen, these gizmos are like your lighting, your particle effects, all of those things, your camera. So if they start to get too big in your scene, I mean, right now I have like a pretty spacious scene, so they're not so bad, but we can see where my particles are, things like that. We can see where my lights are. That can be helpful to find them. But then sometimes I just want to kind of get a clearer view of the scene. So that's something where you can reduce the scale of them, the size of them. You can turn your grid on and off. Right now, we can't even see this because this is slightly above the zero axis plane. You can look at your scene in wireframe. So there are all sorts of different views for seeing your scene, and you can turn off any lighting in the scene. So the scene lighting that I have in there right now, which is really simple directional light, but when toggled off, it just creates a light for you. Okay, so now let's look at some other stuff. Here's our demo rig again, and we saw that. The only thing I've really changed in this demo rig, the right base controller. So a couple of things just to look for here. Those ray interactors, so you have it set to straight line. The ray cast distance, I actually tweaked it so it was a little further, 30, but then in the teleport controller, it's actually a curve, so the difference between the ray casting, so that you can actually like snap an object, or the ray casting ray interactor, so that you can actually teleport to an area. So you see it toggles between the straight line and the projectile line. Oh, and then what about that line visual? So when you have a valid teleport area, you can change all of these colors. All of this stuff can be styled. That's what's really cool about this. It's all modular. And so as you saw before, I was showing you it's green when I can teleport, and then it's red when it's invalid, when you can't teleport. So that's where all of that stuff is located. And you can actually like there's just so many different things you can do. I don't want to go into too many because I've got a lot of other things in the scene. But just, as you dig into this file, if you dig into this file, just making sure you're going through that inspector and you're looking at each one of those components and the settings. And also, I said versioning. So save a second version and just like break it if you want to and try all of these different things out. You can always go back and Command Control Z to the original settings, but that's another way that you can learn. All right, so demo XR rig, basically pretty much the same, and it comes with this event system. Okay, we have a character here, so F, focus, and so some of you might be familiar with Mixamo. So that's where I got this character from. I replaced my Carla character with a character that looked more right for the scene. And now I'm trying to find my window with Mixamo. I had it pulled up before. Yeah. No. Oh, well. Okay, I'll just pull it up again. Okay, so Mixamo is a good place to find a rigged character. I already have mine in there. There's Xbot, right? And when I say rigged, a character that has a skeleton so that you can actually animate it. And instead, of course, if you're a great 3D artist, you're going to do the rigging yourself. But Mixamo is kind of a quick shortcut for getting a rig character, and it is bipeds, rig characters that you can animate in Unity and other game engines, etc., and videos and other things too. All right, and then what did I think I had laughing for this. Okay, so, didn't I have laughing? It was something like that. Okay, well, I'm just going to choose some. Oh, it's because I'm in animation. So I was in character. I need to go to animations and laughing. All right. And so I just click on it once and there it is. And then you can, make all sorts of little adjustments. I want her to be, or them to be less funny, more funny, overdrive. So that's all really fun and kind of simple. But when you bring it in Unity, getting the animation to actually work is the next step, right? And so you just download it. It downloads to my downloads folder. There we go. Cool. And then I have this character, and I hopefully yes. I was organized. So that's what I bring in from Mixamo. So I bring in, I go actually. Step by step, Carla. Assets, import new asset, and I'll find it in my downloads. And laughing might be there. Yeah. So, and I just bring in that 3D object, but packed into that 3D object is a bunch of stuff. And one thing that is packed into it, is this animation. And that's really awesome. There it is. Wow. But if I just drag that character to the scene, it's not going to be animated. So I have to do a couple things. One, for me, because I actually like to then go in and sometimes tweak or edit the animation, I will duplicate the Mixamo. I just press Command D or Control D on my computer, and then there's the animation, and then I have to create something called an animation controller. Right? So that basically is talking to Unity and telling Unity what to do with this animation. And so I can just right click, just like I can right click in Hierarchy, and to create, and then this is where I can create my animation controller, which is right here. Also see there are a lot of other cool things we'll get to that you can create, and probably materials. I didn't review that with you. But here we just go and make our animation controller. I'll just create a new one. New. Okay. So now we have to kind of link all of that stuff up so the animation will actually play. So I have brought my character out into the scene, and because this is XR too, once you put on the headset, like, you're really trying to think world scale, right? You're not thinking screen scale, you're thinking world scale. So I scaled, originally I had this character, they were about, they came in at one, of course, at about 75%, and they were a little shorter than me. At 0.95%, they're a little taller than me. that works. They're a little intimidating. Perfect. And so I have that character. I've just, pulled that into the scene. I've got all my joints and the rig all set up here. And if we go back to animation, you can see how all of that is set up. If I pressed record here right now, I could make some changes to this animation. Don't want to do that. But now, to set it up so that it actually can animate, however, is I just have the character there. In the recent versions of Unity, they used to just put the animator in, if I recall, but now you have to add the animator, but like no brainer, super simple. So you just add your animator. So again, add component, animator. Oh my gosh, it's 150. Okay, hang in there, y'all. Add animator, and then you just drag your animation controller over to the controller, and one more step. So you've hooked up the system. You're saying, controller, I want you to, animate this character, but you have to actually have it linked to an animation. At first, I had this extra one because I was going to just show you something about like one other simple way to loop it, but you can actually loop it here too. Keep it simple, Carla. But anyway, in this animator panel, which is window, panels, animator, you can get to this. And so you've already got, and this is the animator panel base layer for your animation controller. You're not going to have an animation if your animation controller doesn't have an animation to call, right? And so you put that in there, and then as you already saw when I put on the XR headset, there you go, you got a character. Now, a couple of other things that are really important as we go on. We've already kind of talked about teleporting, and we got to jump into some clouds this time. So you have a basic gist of that, I hope. A few other things if you're new to Unity that I didn't go over in that last scene, but materials, you can always create new materials. Now, a lot of times you're just, especially if you're new, you might just be bringing in things. You can create new materials, or you can actually then apply texture maps. We're not going to get into that today, but if you see here in my materials folder, I have a lot of different materials that I've applied. What could I do? Maybe, yes, I will now make what was supposed to be, that's the bouncing ball. I have now made that some kind of brown thing. Ooh, that's kind of ugly. Okay, but just showing you how you can, how simple it is to change your materials for your shader. And I'm just using a very standard shader here. It is called standard, opaque. It was something baked in with the asset with these attributes. Oh boy, there's so much more in this scene, right? So we started with character. Now we're at world static. Again, world static because for scene 3, you'll understand a little bit more about that, but everything's world static. And then I've set up all of our teleportation points. Great. Animated objects. So this sphere, actually, if I play game without the headset, you should still see this sphere. How do you say that? Look, it bounces. Now, I didn't actually, and you can actually see how it's working in, well, now it's moving out of the scene. But also, when you're in play mode, you can make changes to your scene that will, well, that's a static object, but you can make changes to your scene, certain changes to your scene. Yeah. Okay, so I just made her wider, right? And it's only going to last in play mode, but sometimes I'll have my headset on and I'll be peeking out and I'll be like, oh, that needs to be adjusted, that needs to be adjusted, and I'll tweak some things to see what they're like. When you turn off play, though, they're not going to be there anymore. So it goes back to what your original settings were before you hit play. All right. And so this bouncing ball, staying focused. What did I do for that? So I just wanted it to bounce a little bit, but I didn't want to create a whole, animation on the animation timeline. So I decided to just go into its collider. So what does that mean? So we have it set up as a rigid body. That means it actually kind of like has a physics to it, right? So it will gravity will apply to it. We can constrain certain things like the Y or the Z or the X axis, so it could just like kind of move like this. And then I also have this sphere collider on it. So like if it hits other objects, it doesn't just pass through them and they don't pass through it. And then I just wanted a physics material. And so here's where I put, it said physics, and watch this. I just went to create and due to, of course, of course, when I was doing this before, it was like so simple. And now, where's physics material? Anybody? Physics material. Right there, of course. And so then I just set up the physics material. I give it a name, and I set up the friction, the bounciness. The other one, it's 0 or 1. So I set it to 1 and really raise the friction and the static friction. So that's another way to kind of animate an object. New. Okay. What else do I want to show you? Oh, the particles. Right. Um to particle system. Yes, there's the particle system. So this is a really cool little thing. So you just go to components and effects, and you can create your own little particle system. Now, I already have a particle system, so it's not going to let me create a particle system within a particle system. But a lot of times, you might be downloading particle systems from Unity. You might have some problems, but you can kind of create your own that way too. And then you can set up different aspects of it. Here, open editor. In the editor, it might come in as pink if you haven't set like a renderer for it. So this is where you can, just chose one of those little flowers. So all of these are aspects of the particle system that, again, you can tweak and adjust. All right, really cool. And so I set up little flowers hovering around our avatar character there. So that's a particle system. Anything else? Oh, last thing, the butterfly. If we just look, this butterfly, and we go to the animation panel, and I click here, you just see that's a really simple animation. So again, the butterfly is rigged, and so, it's just moving its wings back and forward, up and down, and we get a simple little animation there, right? And and how to, if I wanted to add something to that, again, I just press here. This is the recording button, and I move it, and it automatically keyframes it. Awesome, simple, really nice. All right. We have 3 minutes, so I want to move on to the next scene. We're not going to be able to dig in deep, and it makes sense for like an kind of intro course for us not to be digging in deep, but just so you're aware of this. Right now, this looks like a typical kind of Unity game, right? Like things that we see, the color, everything. It doesn't have a lot of atmosphere. And for low poly, it totally works, and it's really fun, and I love it. But you do have options. So if I go now to my scenes, I can always also just go to scenes up there, file, open scene. But Demo 03 final, oh my gosh, pretty. Some other stuff is going on here. So I decided to just make it a night scene. So let's just take a walk through this scene. I'll show you a couple things, and then we'll end it, and I'll take any, yes, bake lights, yay, yay, yay. And I'll take any questions from you. All right? Quickly, some things to look at here. So remember when I kept talking about world static? We've set all those objects to static, and then I put in these spheres and just set them to emission. So remember when we were talking about shaders before? I just created an emission layer, and so they kind of glow like lights, right? And then all my other objects that aren't static, that move around, are obviously not set to static. Okay, that's a no-brainer. Then I go over here to lighting, and for environment, there was something else I kind of created. The first scene I had just the general skybox material, but for the second 2 scenes, I actually created this dome that has its own texture map. Now, this particular scene, because these were all assets I downloaded from the Unity store, what is the word I'm looking for right now? Oh, it'll come back to me in a second. Well, anyway, there's some problem with some of the baking because of that, the UVs. Yeah, there are a bunch of overlapping UVs. And so that's one thing you also want to think about. Like if you can, build your own models or at least, tweak them in Maya or Blender or somewhere and, make sure the UVs and all that stuff is set up. But anyway, so in this scene, I've set the skybox to none, sun source to none, ambient color to black. And so, and then I added some fog too, so we could get some fog. And then I click down here and I'm generating the lighting right now. And so I start to get this more kind of ambient, more atmospheric environment. But I had to also set something up for my so it's baking. So it's baking. I don't know how to cook, but I do know how to bake in Unity. So anyway, 202. It's setting it up, and if we go over here to bake light maps, we can see it's starting to preview those, and it's baking the light maps. Just to let you know, this can take some time. I probably shouldn't have clicked on it, but I'm not going to stop it right now. Well, yeah, no, I'm not going to stop it. It's okay. So, but then some other things I put in there. So I've got all of those objects that move around so they don't get lit. Like if you saw this before these light probes, they'd be, totally dark. So we just need to go to window and then, no. Why am I just game object light probe group, and we need to put a light probe group in. You can then edit that light probe group and duplicate the points and kind of expand it out into your scene so it'll bounce light off of your baked light map sources and bounce it onto the non-static objects. All right. Finally, the last thing I want to get to, post-processing. I studied painting long time ago, and I still like post-processing is where I feel like I get to be a painter. So with post-processing, you just empty game object, and then what do? You let's go back to the inspector so we can see it. We just add component. Now, very important. It's not going to be in there. You actually have to go to your window, panels, package manager to get your post-processing. So you'll need to download post-processing so you get all of this stuff. But once you do that, you can set this up, and you have to put a post-processing volume. Something else we haven't talked about, you have to create, you can always make new layers here. You have to create a post-processing layer. And then you just have to hook it up to your camera. So you set up this volume, you create a new profile, all of that. You know what I'm pointing, y'all can't see me point at the screen. And then you get to add these different settings. You get to add these effects. But one other thing, because if you just do that, you're going to be like, it doesn't work. Why? And that's because you haven't hooked it up to your camera. So in your main camera, you just go down, you're going to add a post-process layer. You're going to make sure the main camera is what it's talking to, right? You want to make sure it's reading the post-processing layer. I go for anti-aliasing fast mode. We're doing, if it's untethered VR. Again, all these settings you can tweak and play around with. But if I turn off the bloom, for example, whoa, or if I turn off, like I did some exposure and some color correction or color incorrection, whatever you call it. I like to make things kind of otherworldly looking sometimes. And I added some ambient occlusion. Some of the ambient occlusion sometimes in VR, you have to be careful with that and not getting too thick on it. And some other of these post-processing techniques, you want to make sure some of them, like depth of field, can get a little wonky in VR, and again, you don't want to make anybody sick. But post-processing is just really beautiful. All right, so that is it. LOL, what was the LOL for? I am done at 2:05. Yay! Hope everybody enjoyed it. It's so strange not being able to hear y'all. So I'm speaking into the void, but it was so nice to see you in the chat. Breathing. You all take care, and I'm sure I'll see you around soon. All right? Oh, I have to stop streaming, don't I? I'm the one running this show. Oops. Okay. Bye, everybody.